Imagine standing in the center of a really prestigious modern art gallery.
Okay, I can picture it.
You are looking at this digital painting that is so evocative, so perfectly balanced in its melancholy and lighting that it actually moves you to tears.
That kind of visceral emotional reaction.
Exactly. And then you read the placard. You discover the artist doesn't have a pulse, a soul, or like any concept of what sadness even is.
Right.
You aren't connecting with a tortured human genius. You are connecting with a server farm, quietly crunching statistical probabilities in some cooled warehouse.
It is a profoundly jarring realization when that happens.
Yeah.
And it fundamentally fractures how we understand our relationship with technology.
It really does. Which is exactly why we are pulling from this specific stack of sources today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are looking at a really comprehensive AI news digest dated May 4, 2026. And our mission today is to explore how artificial intelligence is rapidly crossing this almost invisible boundary. It is stepping out of the realm of functional computation, where it was, basically just a really fast calculator, and moving straight into the most profoundly human domains we possess.
Our physical health and our creative expression.
Precisely. We are looking at algorithms that are putting on a stethoscope in one room and picking up a paintbrush in the next. And whether you are scheduling a doctor's appointment this week or just listening to a new playlist on your commute, the underlying logic we are unpacking today is actively redefining the boundaries of your everyday life.
And, the goal here isn't just to marvel at the novelty of it all. The functional capabilities are staggering, yes, but we really need to examine the deeper mechanics.
The why behind it all.
Exactly. We need to understand why this transition is forcing us to fundamentally question human value, systemic ethics, and what it actually means to have a human touch in a world that is becoming hyper-automated.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with what might be the most objective, data-driven leap in the digest, which is AI diagnosing the human body.
A massive shift.
Huge. Our sources highlight a groundbreaking healthcare model that is currently operating with just unprecedented diagnostic accuracy. We are talking about a neural network trained on massive global data sets.
Right. Millions of high-resolution medical images.
And decades of complex patient records. It uses all of this to detect everything from a common lung infection to incredibly subtle early-stage cancers. And the immediate benefits are obvious. Right?
Well, yeah. It speeds up triage, it drastically reduces human error, and it's poised to save countless lives through early detection.
Right, exactly. And looking ahead, the digest even points to AI-assisted surgeries and treatment plans generated specifically by algorithms. But as I was reading how it actually processes these images, I realized my old analogy for AI was completely wrong.
How so?
Well, I used to think of it as a super doctor who has just memorized every medical textbook.
Yeah. No, viewing it simply as an entity with perfect recall completely misses the mechanism of how it actually operates.
Right. It's less like a doctor with a perfect memory and more like a doctor who can take your current MRI and simultaneously overlay it with 10 million other MRIs in a fraction of a second.
The pattern recognition is on a totally different scale.
Exactly. It isn't just remembering facts. It is actively highlighting a 3-pixel deviation in your scan that no human eye could ever physically catch because it knows exactly what that specific cluster of pixels resulted in 10,000 times before.
Yeah.
But that raises a massive question. How does a traditional human doctor even begin to compete with or relate to a tool that processes reality on a microscopic mathematical level like that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it isn't really about competition. The real paradigm shift here is the move toward hyper-personalized medicine through algorithmic clustering.
Okay, algorithmic clustering. Break that down for us.
So, historically, medicine has relied heavily on actuarial logic and broad averages. A human doctor looks at your symptoms and compares them to a mental framework of what typically happens to an average person of your age, weight, and demographic.
Right, like the standard curve.
Exactly. But an algorithm doesn't need to rely on broad demographic averages. It relies on granular pattern recognition. It could look at your specific blood work in your specific scan, map it across a multidimensional space, and find the exact treatment protocol that worked for the 100 people in history whose physiological markers look exactly like yours.
Oh, wow.
So the human doctor isn't competing with that capability. They are utilizing it. The algorithm does the impossible heavy lifting of multidimensional data analysis, which theoretically frees the physician to interpret the nuances of your lived experience and make the final judgment call.
Okay, that makes sense. So what does this all mean for the average patient then? Because the theory of a mathematically perfect diagnosis sounds like a utopia. But the digest spends a significant amount of time on the messy, uncomfortable reality of actually applying this to human beings.
Yeah, the implementation phase is incredibly complex.
Right. Implementing this isn't just a technological hurdle of getting the code right. It is a massive societal friction point. For one, think about the data privacy implications for a moment.
It's staggering.
To get these models to this level of accuracy, they require an unbelievable amount of highly sensitive data. Imagine your entire family's medical history, every vulnerability, fed into a corporate server to train a model that you ultimately have no control over.
And that data appetite leads directly to the most critical tension the experts are debating right now.
Exactly. The risk of exacerbating healthcare inequalities. I mean, if this AI system is learning entirely from historical medical records, aren't we just taking all of our current flawed healthcare disparities and hardwiring them into a shiny new algorithm?
It's a very real danger.
Yeah, because it feels like we run the risk of treating historical bias as objective medical science.
This raises an important question about algorithmic determinism and the fundamental nature of data. We tend to view data as raw, objective truth.
Right, numbers don't lie.
But historical medical data is not objective reality. It is a documented record of human decisions. And human decisions are inherently flawed.
Oh, that's a really good point.
If we feed an algorithm a data set where marginalized groups historically had less access to preventative care, or say where their pain was systematically underdocumented by medical professionals.
The AI doesn't know that's a bad thing.
Right. The AI doesn't recognize that as the sociological tragedy. It recognizes it as a mathematical baseline.
So it treats a lack of care as the standard of care.
Precisely. To give a concrete example from the sources of how this mechanism fails, early dermatological AI models were trained heavily on images of lighter skin tones because that was the bulk of the available data set.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. As a result, they were highly accurate at detecting melanomas on white patients, but statistically failed to recognize the exact same cancers on darker skin tones.
Wow.
Similarly, cardiology algorithms trained predominantly on male data have struggled to recognize how heart attacks present in women because the physiological markers are often entirely different.
Which means the AI has literal blind spots built into its code. It doesn't know what hasn't been shown.
Exactly. And this is why the digest stresses the urgent necessity for robust ethical guidelines. Technology alone cannot solve human inequity. It is a multiplier.
Right. It scales whatever you give it.
Exactly. If an algorithm optimizes for a biased data set, it will simply accelerate that bias at scale. A tool designed with the express purpose of saving lives could unintentionally leave entire demographics further behind if we don't actively engineer solutions for the biases hidden inside the data.
It requires constant systemic regulation.
Constant regulation, yes.
It is a massive reality check. We have this unprecedented potential for diagnostic perfection, but it is firmly anchored to our very imperfect human past.
Well said.
Now, I want to look at how these underlying mechanics transition into the next segment of our sources, because we've just seen what happens when an algorithm hunts for anomalies in the pixels of an X-ray to diagnose a physical body. But what happens when you point that exact same pixel-predicting logic at a blank canvas? We aren't mapping cancer cells anymore. We are mapping human emotion.
And that's where the conversation gets incredibly philosophical.
It really does. The digest details the massive disruption AI is causing in the visual arts scene. There is this art collective that utilized algorithms trained on the works of famous artists to generate a series of stunning digital paintings.
Like the one you mentioned in the gallery at the start.
Right, and these aren't just novelties circulating online anymore. They are currently being displayed in a leading, highly prestigious gallery.
Which has triggered an absolute firestorm among critics, philosophers, and, well, the artists themselves.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If we think about the mechanism we just discussed in healthcare, the AI is treating the entirety of art history the exact same way it treated those medical data sets.
Exactly the same underlying logic.
It is studying Van Gogh's brushstrokes or Rembrandt's use of light with the same cold mathematical precision that it studies a lung scan. It maps the visual patterns. So if an AI can perfectly mimic a master painter, is it actually an artist? Or is it just a highly advanced, remarkably complex copy machine?
I have to push back a bit on the copy machine analogy because that implies it is just stitching together existing images like a digital collage.
Okay.
And that isn't how the architecture works. These generative models operate within something called the latent space.
Latent space. What is that exactly?
Imagine a vast, multidimensional map of every visual concept it has ever learned. The concept of a dog is mathematically located near the concept of a wolf, but it's also located near the concept of Fluffy.
Oh, I get it. It maps relationships between ideas.
Right. When the AI generates a new image, it isn't copying Van Gogh. It is navigating to the exact mathematical coordinates where Van Gogh's style intersects with, say, a starry night over a modern skyline.
So it's synthesizing.
Yes, it is mathematically deconstructing the geometry of a style and applying it to a novel prompt.
Okay, so it isn't copying. It's calculating original geometry based on historical rules. That makes the output even more complicated to categorize.
It really does.
Well,
What's fascinating here is how effectively this shatters our traditional definitions of authorship.
because there's no human touch.
Exactly. For centuries, art has been defined not just by the final aesthetic output, but by the intent of the creator. A painting held value because a human being felt a specific emotion,
Yeah.
grief, joy, rage, and they physically struggled to translate that intangible feeling onto a tangible canvas.
Right, you're appreciating their struggle.
Yes, but this gallery exhibition drives a permanent wedge between the act of creation and the human intent behind it. The algorithm feels nothing.
Nothing at all.
It is executing a highly sophisticated statistical probability of what pixels should go where, based on the prompt provided by the programmer.
But going back to that gallery scenario from the beginning of the show, the output still makes the human viewer feel something. The painting is still moving.
And that is the true philosophical disruption. If a piece of art moves you to your core, but you subsequently find out it was generated by mathematical weights in a neural network, does that invalidate your genuine emotional response?
That is such a wild question to think about.
It forces us to ask whether the value of art lies in the human struggle required to create it, or entirely in the audience's reception of the final piece.
Wow.
And legally, by the way, the framework is a disaster. Who owns the copyright? The programmer who wrote the code, the human who typed the prompt, the machine that navigated the latent space, or the thousands of original artists whose life's work made up the training data.
Oh man, that is a legal nightmare. Our current understanding of intellectual property is completely unequipped for this reality.
Completely unequipped.
And this disruption isn't contained to just visual arts. The digest expands this into the audio domain as well. AI is actively learning the universal human language of music.
Yeah, that's another huge leap.
Musicians and producers are currently experimenting with algorithms to compose entirely new tracks. They are feeding chord progressions, tempo data, and genre history into the models, blending traditional musical theory with cutting-edge tech.
And the results are really interesting.
Yeah, the sources describe the resulting sound as both novel and familiar. It's finding musical patterns that humans haven't naturally gravitated toward, but doing so within a structure that sounds pleasing to the ear.
Right.
It opens up wild new possibilities, but it also raises a profound existential question about the future of artistic professions. I mean, what is the value of human creativity in an increasingly automated world?
But it is a completely valid anxiety to have. If music is essentially just math frequencies, tempos, and structural formulas, and AI is inherently better at math than we are.
Right.
It can map out exactly what sequence of notes releases dopamine in the human brain.
Which is where I have to offer some vulnerable pushback on behalf of anyone listening who feels unsettled by this.
Go for it.
If an AI can eventually be trained to compose the absolute perfect symphony or, paint the undisputed perfect masterpiece by literally reverse engineering human psychology and neurochemistry, what is left for us?
It's the ultimate question.
Are we risking automating the friction, the joy, and the fundamental struggle completely out of the human experience? If the machine can do it perfectly, why should we do it at all?
It is a really heavy question. But it might help to look at historical precedents. Artists have grappled with existential dread during every major technological leap.
That's true.
Rather than viewing AI as the death of human creativity, consider it as the newest instrument in the orchestra. Think about the invention of the camera.
Oh, okay.
When photography was first introduced, there was a massive panic in the fine art world. Painters thought their profession was entirely obsolete. Why would anyone spend 3 weeks sitting for a portrait when a machine could capture objective reality perfectly in a fraction of a second?
Right, because before the camera, the primary function of a painter was to document reality accurately.
Exactly. But the camera didn't kill painting. Instead, it liberated painting from the burden of stripped realism. Because a machine could now capture realistic proportions perfectly, human painters were forced to evolve.
They had to pivot.
They did.
Yeah.
They moved away from objective reality and started painting subjective experience. That is how we got Impressionism, Cubism, abstract art. They began painting emotion and perception things a camera fundamentally could not capture.
Wow. Okay.
AI is poised to do the exact same thing to our current creative landscape.
So you're saying AI will automate the highly structured, repetitive aspects of music and art, but that automation will force humans into a new creative era.
Yes. The novel and familiar music the digest mentions isn't just a machine working in isolation. It is the result of human musicians using the AI to explore that latent space, discovering mathematical patterns they wouldn't have found organically.
Ah, and then they apply their own uniquely human taste to curate, shape, and perform that output?
Exactly. The AI provides the raw material, but the human provides the soul through curation. It challenges us to find entirely new ways to express what a machine fundamentally cannot feel.
It's not about the machine painting the masterpiece. It's about the human using the machine as a new kind of brush.
Perfectly said.
When you frame it like that, it brings this entire deep dive full circle. When we step back and look at the sheer whiplash of the modern AI era we've covered today, it is incredibly clarifying.
It really is.
We are looking at the exact same underlying logic, the exact same mathematical principles of multidimensional pattern recognition. And on one hand, it is analyzing the geometry of ourselves to perform life-saving medical diagnoses with a precision that outpaces human doctors.
And on the other hand,
It is analyzing the geometry of our culture, composing novel music, and generating gallery-quality art that completely shatters our historical definition of authorship.
it is a remarkable convergence. We are no longer just watching a functional tool calculate numbers. We are watching it become a systemic participant in our physical survival and our cultural evolution.
Yeah.
And the debates we've pulled from the digest today, the data privacy risks, the algorithmic hardwiring of historical bias, the desperate need for ethical frameworks, and the future of human professions. These aren't theoretical discussions for a distant future.
No, they're happening right now.
These are the active tensions shaping the world today.
Which is exactly why we wanted to bring this specific stack of sources to you. This isn't science fiction. This is the literal reality shaping the healthcare infrastructure you rely on and the media you consume on your phone. So, as you go about your week, we encourage you to actively notice where you see AI encroaching on historically human tasks in your own life. Look for the invisible algorithms. Think about the data you are generating, because understanding these mechanisms is the first step to ensuring they work for us rather than just acting upon us.
Absolutely. As we navigate this transition, the most critical skill won't be trying to outcompute the machine. It will be figuring out how to fiercely protect and elevate our humanity alongside it.
And to leave you with a brand new thought to mull over as we wrap up, something that builds on the incredible paradox we've explored today.
Let's hear it.
If an algorithm can eventually diagnose our physical ailments perfectly, without any of the biases, blind spots, or fatigue of a human doctor,
Right.
and if that same exact technology can perfectly compose a piece of music tailored to uniquely soothe our specific emotional stress,
Right.
will we eventually reach a point where we actually prefer the cold, precise care and creativity of a machine over the flawed, messy, unpredictable touch of another human being?
Now that is something to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.